Have you ever wondered how a man born in a one-room log cabin on the Kentucky frontier rose to become the 16th President of the United States, preserved the Union, and helped end slavery? Abraham Lincoln's journey from humble beginnings to national leadership is a tale of resilience, self-education, and moral courage. In the early morning of February 12, 1809, a baby boy came into the world in Hardin County, Kentucky. His parents, Thomas Lincoln, a carpenter and farmer, and Nancy Hanks Lincoln, a gentle woman of deep faith, named him Abraham. Life on the frontier was harsh, winters bitter, summers sweltering, and disease ever-present. Nancy Hanks Lincoln encouraged young Abe's curiosity from an early age. She would read the Bible aloud by the fire, and even before he could read, those stories, tales of heroes and parables of right and wrong, began to shape his sense of justice. Abe developed a deep love for stories and learning, inspired by the warmth and wisdom of his mother. But tragedy struck when Abe was just 9 years old. Nancy fell ill and died. Her loss cast a quiet shadow over his heart, yet it also steeled his resolve to persevere. In 1819, a year after Nancy's death, Thomas Lincoln remarried. His new wife, Sarah Bush Johnston, brought warmth and stability into the grieving household. Abraham, just 10 at the time, found a loving and supportive stepmother in Sarah. She treated him as her own, referring to him as my own child. Sarah quickly recognized Abe's intelligence and curiosity. While many on the frontier dismissed the value of formal education, she stood firmly behind his love of reading and learning. She defended his right to study rather than labor constantly and once said, "Abe was the best boy I ever saw." Her support left a lasting impression on him. Abe's relationship with his father, Thomas, was more complicated. Thomas was a rugged frontiersman who struggled to understand his son's intellectual ambitions. Sarah often served as a bridge between father and son, doing her best to ease tensions and keep the peace in their home. In 1816, the Lincolns left Kentucky behind, moving to Indiana Territory in search of better land. The journey was arduous, creaking wagons, muddy trails, and nights under the stars. They settled in Spencer County, clearing trees and planting corn. Abe, now a teenager, worked sunup to sundown, splitting rails for fences, hauling water, tending livestock. Formal schooling was scarce. He attended only about a year in total, in little frontier schoolhouses with punishing winters and few books. But his thirst for knowledge was unquenchable. He borrowed a spelling book, scratched letters in the dirt, and asked neighbors to teach him to write. By candlelight, he devoured borrowed volumes, Pilgrim's Progress, Robinson Crusoe, Aesop's Fables. When Abe was 21, he struck out on his own. He took a flatboat down the Mississippi to New Orleans, witnessing the horror of slave auctions along the riverbanks. The sight of human beings sold like cattle left an indelible mark on him. Returning upriver, he made his way to New Salem, Illinois, a bustling village at the confluence of Sangamon River and frontier dreams. There, he clerked in a general store, studied law in his spare hours, and earned a reputation for honesty. Honest Abe, they called him. He split rails for neighbors, hauled logs, and in every task, showed uncommon strength and good humor. In New Salem, Lincoln's mind blossomed. He borrowed law books, read them by firelight, and taught himself legal principles. When a local surveyor was injured, Abe stepped in, using a compass and chain to measure land. That job paid him in food, lodging, and a growing sense of confidence. Soon, he was practicing as a self-taught attorney, traveling circuit courts on horseback, defending clients with clear logic and folksy wit. In one celebrated case, he disarmed a hostile witness by asking, "Have you ever seen me lie?" The man, startled, replied no, and his testimony collapsed. Politics beckoned. In 1832, at age 23, Lincoln campaigned for a seat in the Illinois General Assembly. He lost, by 8 votes. Yet he refused to give up. 2 years later, he ran again and won, launching a decade-long stint in the state legislature. During that time, he served briefly as a captain in the Black Hawk War of 1832, though he saw no combat. Back home, he refined his legal practice, built friendships, and saved money. In 1834, he married Mary Todd, a spirited Kentucky woman with a sharp mind and strong opinions. Their courtship was lively, debates over politics, literature, and the future of the nation. On November 4, 1842, Abe and Mary exchanged vows in Springfield, Illinois. They settled into a modest house, welcomed their first son, Robert, in 1843, and, in time, Edward, William, Willie, and Thomas, Tad. Family life brought Lincoln immense joy and deep sorrow. Edward died in infancy. Little Willie succumbed to illness in 1862, plunging Abe into grief even as the Civil War raged. Mary, too, struggled with anxiety and loss. Yet, through it all, the Lincolns found comfort in each other. Abe read bedtime stories, carved toys for his boys, and taught them to be curious and kind. Meanwhile, national politics grew fractious. The Compromise of 1850, the Fugitive Slave Act, and the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 inflamed passions over slavery's expansion. Lincoln, once ambivalent on abolition, came to see slavery as a moral wrong that threatened the nation's founding promise. When Senator Stephen A. Douglas championed popular sovereignty, letting territories decide on slavery, Lincoln rose to challenge him. The Lincoln-Douglas debates of 1858 captivated the nation. In smoky halls and open fields, Lincoln spoke of a house divided against itself cannot stand. He lost that Senate race, but his eloquence and integrity made him a Republican hero. By 1860, the Republican Party nominated Abraham Lincoln for president. Few believed a man of humble origins could win, but Lincoln's message resonated: the Union must be preserved, slavery should not spread. In the autumn election, he carried the northern states and secured victory, even without Southern support. When news came, Lincoln stood calm, though Mary wept with relief and fear. On March 4, 1861, he delivered his first inaugural address in Washington, D.C., pledging to hold, occupy, and possess federal property, and appealing to seceded states to rejoin the Union peacefully. Yet, peace proved elusive. In April, Confederate forces fired on Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor. Lincoln called for volunteers, and the nation plunged into civil war. The young president, tall and solemn in his stovepipe hat, spent long days and nights in the War Department, poring over maps and dispatches. He met generals, sometimes clashing with them, always striving to find leaders who could defeat the rebellion. His own staff described him as more like a jackknife than a polished politician, simple, practical, and focused on the task at hand. The first year of war tested Lincoln's patience and resolve. Early Union defeats at Bull Run and Shiloh cost thousands of lives. Critics assailed him in newspapers, some whispered of impeachment. Yet Lincoln believed the Union cause was just, and he refused to abandon it. In the summer of 1862, after another costly campaign, he began drafting an executive order that would change the course of the war in the nation, the Emancipation Proclamation. Announced on September 22, 1862, as a warning to the Confederacy, the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation declared that if the Southern states did not lay down arms by January 1, 1863, their enslaved people would be thenceforward, and forever free. When January came, Lincoln signed the final proclamation, freeing enslaved people in rebelling territories. It did not apply to border states still in the Union, but its moral force was undeniable. The war was now fought not only to save the Union, but to end human bondage. Did you ever pause to think how extraordinary that moment was? A president, wielding executive power, upended centuries of injustice, and did so in the middle of a brutal war. The proclamation allowed black men to enlist in the Union Army, adding moral clarity and manpower to the cause. By war's end, nearly 200,000 black soldiers and sailors had served, many fighting for the freedom that Lincoln had proclaimed. On November 19, 1863, Lincoln traveled to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, to dedicate a new national cemetery. The Battle of Gettysburg, just months earlier, had left some 50,000 casualties. In a speech lasting barely 2 minutes, Lincoln distilled the war's purpose, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Though brief, the Gettysburg Address became one of the most quoted speeches in history. As 1864 dawned, the war dragged on. Union generals vied for success. Sherman marched through Georgia, Grant pressed on Richmond. Lincoln's own re-election bid seemed uncertain. His cabinet urged him to step aside, fearing defeat. But Lincoln refused. He believed his leadership was essential. In November, he triumphed over Democrat George B. McClellan, carrying the Electoral College by a wide margin. Supporters celebrated in Springfield, where the bells tolled and fireworks lit the sky. In his second inaugural address on March 4, 1865, Lincoln spoke not of victory, but of healing, with malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right. He envisioned a reunited nation, extending justice to all, binding up the nation's wounds. It was a speech of profound humility and faith, a fitting capstone to his leadership. Yet, fate had one final twist. On April 9, 1865, General Robert E. Lee surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse. The war was effectively over. Lincoln returned to the White House, eager to begin Reconstruction. He planned to offer amnesty to former Confederates who swore allegiance, to restore Southern states swiftly, and to protect newly freed people with constitutional amendments. But before those plans could unfold, tragedy struck. On the evening of April 14th, Lincoln attended a performance of Our American Cousin at Ford's Theater. Seated in a box beside the First Lady, he laughed at the play's jokes, perhaps his first real laugh in years of war. At 10:04, a shot rang out. John Wilkes Booth, an actor and Confederate sympathizer, had slipped into the box and fired a derringer at Lincoln's head. The president slumped forward, blood stained his collar. Rushed across the street to Peterson House, Lincoln lay unconscious through the night. Mary sat by his side, holding his hand. Physicians worked in vain. At 7:22 a.m. on April 15, 1865, Abraham Lincoln breathed his last. He was 56 years old. Across the nation, bells tolled, flags flew at half-mast, and mourners wept in the streets. His body lay in state in the Capitol Rotunda, then traveled by funeral train to Springfield, where he was buried on May 4th. What do we make of this life? A man of modest birth, with little formal schooling, yet possessed of uncommon intelligence, wit, and moral clarity. He rose by sheer force of character, taught himself law, and used language, plain yet profound, to lead a fractured nation through its darkest hour. He faced personal grief, national crisis, and political opposition, yet never wavered from his belief in liberty and equality.
Today, we remember Lincoln in countless ways: the soaring memorial on the National Mall, the image on the penny and the $5 bill, the evergreen words of the Gettysburg Address, still taught in schools. But beyond monuments and money lies a deeper legacy, the reminder that one person, armed with integrity and purpose, can change the course of history. So when you think of Abraham Lincoln, picture the boy splitting rails, the self-taught lawyer in his dusty boots, the quiet president pacing the War Department, the grieving father writing letters to Mary, the visionary leader striving to bind up the nation's wounds. His story is not just a chapter in a textbook, it is a testament to perseverance, empathy, and the enduring promise of a government of the people, by the people, for the people.
Hey everyone! Are you passionate about the stories of legendary icons, actors, actresses, and athletes? Then you're in the right place. Subscribe to my YouTube channel and dive into captivating videos that celebrate the lives, struggles, and triumphs of the world's most inspiring figures. From behind-the-scenes secrets to untold stories, you don't want to miss a thing. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you're always first to catch the latest drops. Let's celebrate greatness, one story at a time. Join the journey today.